Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of college basketball. I'm back once again with another Boiler Ball recap as the Indiana Hoosiers came into West Lafayette for the next episode of this storied rivalry. As with every game in this rivalry, there was a lot going into this one, and I can say I was there to witness history. Without further ado, let's run it. So Purdue comes into this game looking to complete the season sweep in Mackey Arena, avenging the season sweep that Indiana pulled off last year. Purdue came in as the heavy favorite and showed exactly why they run the state of Indiana right now in the world of men's college basketball, covering the 17.5-point spread on their way to another statement win full of great moments, if you're a Boilermaker like me, and a whole lot of frustration for all Hoosier fans out there. Purdue ends up winning this one with a score of 79-59. And boy, was it an entertaining one, starting with obviously the man of the night, Zach Edey. Ends up with 26 points on 7 for 15 shooting, not exactly his most efficient game, but 1 for 1 from the three-point line, which we will get into later. 11 for 16 from the free throw line with 13 rebounds and 4 assists, which actually tied the game high for Purdue with Braden Smith. Speaking of Braden Smith, he had another fantastic game in this one with 19 points on 8 of 13 shooting from the floor, 1 for 2 from 3, 2 for 2 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 steals. So he was everywhere. He was doing a whole lot of great work, whether it be attacking drop coverage or did a great job of actually attacking the basket on some of the various pick and rolls where you just didn't really have some of their rotations. But for the Hoosiers, their leading scorer, believe it or not, if you went into this game and picked CJ Gunn to be the leading scorer for the Indiana Hoosiers, then you'd be correct. He comes off the bench in this one and ends up with 13 points on 4 of 6 shooting, 3 of 4 from 3, with 2 rebounds and 3 assists to go along with it, which pretty surprising performance from him. Obviously, they have a couple of guys coming off the bench there that can do some damage, but to be fair, we haven't seen it a lot this season, and a lot of their usual weapons weren't really firing all that well. One of those usual weapons being Kel'el Ware, who ended up with 11 points on 5 of 7 shooting, and 1 for 1 from 3, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists. So overall, he had a relatively efficient game. They just didn't find ways to use him very much. He was used most in the pick and roll and trying to throw lobs at the rim, where he had one of those 2 shots that he missed was a missed dunk on what would have been a very, very tough lob to reel in. But I was surprised in this one that they did not try to use him more, given the fact that they did have some pretty decent success when they called his number. Some of the honorable mentions for this team, you've got Mason Gills from Purdue, who has been, fantastic off the bench. Not a huge factor in this one, but still made the most of his minutes with 9 points on 3 of 6 shooting, with 5 rebounds and 2 steals. For the Hoosiers, you have Mackenzie Mbako, who's a freshman who has had some bright moments at times and has still kind of yet to find the consistency really with this team. Ends up with 12 points on 4 of 9 shooting and 4 for 4 from the free throw line, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 1 block. So he did just a little bit of everything, but there was a lot for this Indiana team that just didn't really quite go well as the game went on. They battled early, keeping Purdue at bay, not allowing them to jump out to much of a significant lead until the last 6 minutes of the first half, where Purdue finally found the 3 ball and got one to drop in the form of a much needed Braden Smith 3 in transition. And that's where Purdue really took hold of the momentum and never really let go. That 3 extended the lead to 8 at that point, and Purdue was able to extend the lead further to 12 by halftime. Speaking of the 3 ball, both teams struggled mightily in the first half, and that's really what made the difference for Purdue down the stretch in the second half when it came to extending this lead. Purdue found a way to get shots to fall from deep in the second half, ending the game shooting 8 for 21 from 3, good for a 38% clip, where Indiana really couldn't get much going outside of CJ Gunn bringing quality minutes off the bench, making 3 out of their 4 threes as a team, as they ended shooting 4 for 16 from beyond the arc, good for a flat 25%. IU just isn't known as an overall good 3-point shooting team, and it really showed in this one. They got some good looks throughout the game for quite a few different shooters, but outside of CJ Gunn and 1 top of the key 3 that he shot and made for Kel'el Ware, nobody could knock down anything from outside for the Hoosiers. It's hard to win games against quality opponents when the 3-point line feels like your enemy. And that's been the story all year long for the Hoosiers. But the best big man on the court and in the country, the best player in all of college basketball, Zach Edey had something to say about that in the second half. Anything you can do, I can do better. And just to put an absolute dagger in the hearts of Hoosier basketball fans everywhere, executed a perfect pick and pop to the top of the key and banked in a glorious three, the first make of his career from beyond the arc, bringing up his season percentage to a whopping 50% from beyond the arc. So you can add him to that extensive list of Purdue players that shoot over 40% from three. And when I tell you that Mackey almost crumbled, I was sure that the roof might fall in. Heck, I even physically fell down while celebrating. It was an insane moment, and I am so happy I got to witness it. Absolutely the best moment I've witnessed inside Mackey as a student and as a Purdue fan, basketball fan in general. And for it to happen against IU out of all teams was just the icing on the cake. Some key points for both teams, starting with Purdue, really was to stay patient and trust your guys. They didn't get off to the hottest start, and definitely not how they wanted to start, letting IU hang around for most of the first half. But Painter didn't do anything crazy, and he didn't really completely scrap his game plan. He stuck with his guys, and he knew that shots would start falling if they just kept finding the open ones, taking the open ones, and wearing down the Hoosiers with Edey down low and getting good ball movement on offense to find lanes to the basket for guys like Braden Smith and Lance Jones. Additionally, he gave some guys the chances to prove themselves and be difference makers off the bench, namely a guy like Miles Colvin, who hasn't seen the floor in a lot of conference games, which kind of much to the chagrin of a lot of Purdue basketball fans. They see the potential there, and we want to see him get more time. There just hasn't been a lot of times where Painter has found ways to get him into the rotation. But in this one, he got him out there on the floor even in the first half, and he wasted no time in showing his offensive capabilities, draining a catch and shoot three on the right wing. He's a guy that I'd love to see get more minutes, even though his defense can be lacking at times. I think he needs to learn by opportunity, and I think he's gotten better and better every time he's played. His shooting capability and athleticism alone are more than enough in terms of competing for minutes at the three guard, especially against a guy like Ethan Morton, who just really struggles on pretty much everything on the offensive end, but gets minutes because of his defensive capabilities. But for me, I think with time and experience, Colvin can turn into a serious weapon for the Boilers, even if it's not necessarily this year with a stacked roster that they have. Another point would be on the offensive glass. We know just how good of a rebounding team Purdue can be when you have a guy like Zach Edey in the middle. But with their shots not really falling like they're used to seeing, the Boilers really attack the offensive boards, securing 15 rebounds on the offensive glass and giving themselves plenty of opportunities for second chance points. And it wasn't even just Edey. He did end up with 6 of them, but you saw Trey Kaufman-Renn, Braden Smith, Lance Jones, Cam Heide, even Will Berg at the end, and Miles Colvin all find themselves creating second chance points throughout the game. And that's just a kill shot for a team working their tails off on the defensive end to force misses and try to come back from a deficit. And that really proved to be key in this one. For Indiana, it really comes down to guard play. And this is something that's talked about quite a bit in most college basketball circles or when you take a look at this team. But it's been a glaring issue for the Hoosiers all year long. Starting Gabe Cupps and Trey Galloway at the 1 and 2 guards leaves plenty to be desired, with Cupps doing a whole lot of nothing in his 16 minutes in this one. And that's been a bit of a consistency for him throughout the year. He has struggled to get things going in a whole lot of them. He has the occasional bright moment, but it kind of feels like he's not really ready yet. And Trey Galloway is struggling more than usual in this one. He did score 10 at least, but missed on all 4 of his threes. He was better as a facilitator in this game, notching 7 assists. But there's a reason why Indiana is an inside-out team. Their guards just haven't shown any consistency this year, even when Xavier Johnson was healthy, who they definitely expected a lot more out of this year than they've gotten. It has caused nightmares for the Hoosiers since the jump. Between Cupps, Galloway, and the combination of CJ Gunn and Anthony Leal off the bench, Indiana hasn't found any combination of scoring, playmaking, and defending that has been worth much of anything throughout the season. And that's a big part of what's made them such an offensively inefficient team, where they currently find themselves outside the top 100 in offensive efficiency in all of college basketball. Until they figure out guard play, which it doesn't look like they will this season, this team will continue to sputter. And on a similar vein, you've got three-point shooting. I talked about it a bit earlier, but with little success and consistency with their guards, that's really fed into their inefficiency from beyond the three-point arc that we saw in this game. I'm surprised that they didn't try to use Khalil Ware more from beyond the arc, especially against a guy like Zach Edey, who you want to try to drag away from the basket. Because in a game like this, he was, or just overall, Khalil Ware is the only guy on this team that shoots over 40% from three with over 25 attempts. When you think about that and him being their 7-foot tall center, that shows just how much of a glaring issue the three-point ball is for this roster. He knocked down his only a three-point attempt in this one, so I thought once they found that to be, a successful point, that they would utilize that more down the stretch, or at least try to, but it felt like they never really tried to dial up that one very often, or at least not enough to actually attempt to get, any amount of consistent open looks on it. So I don't really know what to say about their usage there. Something kind of just tells me that the game plan of whatever their game plan was didn't really go to plan, and they were just kind of freelancing it for the rest of it there. As a team, they just really don't have that type of shooting prowess, and that's probably why they don't shoot it very often. At least they're aware of their problem, I guess. But they shoot just short of 33% as a team on 15.5 attempts per game, which is very low, even though it may not necessarily sound like that. For instance, Purdue, a team like them, shoots 21.5 times per game, and that still doesn't crack the top 200 in all of college basketball when it comes to attempts per game. IU sits in the mid 300s. So neither team is a team that really just launches them, but IU clearly knows that that's not really their strength, so they don't go to it very much. But when you don't have that type of success out there, it's hard to be a very good offensive team. But as a Purdue fan, you really couldn't ask for much more out of this rivalry game, except for maybe them winning by 30 instead of 20. Despite a pretty slow start, the Boilers found their way to take over the game down the stretch and never really let Indiana have any sense of hope in the second half at all, even with the occasional run. And they had a couple of threes. CJ Gunn hit a couple of those in that second half. But we're looking to start a new long-term streak. So every streak has to start with 2 wins. So we'll see what this rivalry has in store going forward, and if these two teams have a chance of meeting in the Big Ten tournament, which, given how the Hoosiers have been playing, the odds aren't great that they'll make it far enough. Looking into the near future, Purdue has Minnesota coming into town on Thursday as they look to extend their lead at the top of the Big Ten as we get closer and closer to March. And for Indiana, really doesn't get much easier. They get Northwestern heading to Mackey South this Sunday. If they want to have any chance of stealing an NCAA tournament bid, they're really going to need to rack up basically all of the games that they have in the rest of the regular season, as well as a strong showing in the Big Ten tournament. But with their current trajectory, it just doesn't really point in that direction. But that's all I've got for today. The Boilers have quite a few games left in the regular season, so keep an eye out for more recaps, as well as plenty more Boom Buster Believable episodes as I make my way through the Big Ten. We'll see how many I can crank out before the Big Ten tournament starts, but there's a lot of teams, and we're starting to run out of time. But until then, like and subscribe for more college basketball content. And until next time, I'm out.